သာသနာတော်နေ့2565နှစ်မြန်မာတက္ကရာ1383ခုနှစ်ခရစ်နှစ်18ရက်12လ2021တောက်ကြနေ့ရန်ကုန်တိုင်းဒဂုံမြို့တိတောင်ပိုင်းမြို့နယ်အမှတ်ဝင်းကျောင်းမဂုတ်ပဒနာဓမ္မရိပ်သာကြီးတွင်ပြုလုပ်အပ်သည့်ပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါအင်္ဂလိပ်မြန်မာသင်တန်းတရားတော်ဒီကနေ့အမှတ်5ဖြစ်ပါတယ်သင်တန်းမစမီတရားပိုင်းရှင်ဖြစ်တော်မူသောသုံးလောကထွဋ်ထာသဗ္ဗညုမြတ်စွာဘုရားရှင်ကိုရောမြတ်ကြီးအားနမောတတ3ချိန်ရွတ်ဆို၍ဘုရားရှိခိုးပူဇော်ကြောကြပါကုန်စို့နမောတတဘဂဝတောအရဟတောသမ္မာသမ္ဗုဒ္ဓတ္တနမောတတ္တဘဂဝတောအရဟတောသမ္မာသမ္ဗုဒ္ဓတ္တနမောတတ္တဘဂဝတောအရဟတောသမ္မာသမ္ဗုဒ္ဓတ္တPresently, what I'm going to talk about is dependent origination. Dependent origination. Talking about dependent origination, we have to study 12 factors, as you know. Presently, we are studying 12 factors one by one, step by step, from avijja to sankhara, vijnana. Altogether 3 factors we have already explained as a basic only. And basic point, avijja, sankhara, and vijnana. Only 3 factors we have already discussed. Only 3 factors. In this connection, to understand very clearly avijja, we have to study the main point of avijja, main point. When you study avijja, ignorance, main points are altogether 8 objects. When you study avijja, you have to know 8 objects. No matter what, you have to study 8 objects when you study avijja. Studying avijja is not enough without understanding 8 objects. It is a must. 8 object is very important point when you study avijja. Later on, you can study many more story and many others data or document or whatever you study, it doesn't matter. You can study any others. But what you have to study, main point in avijja is 8 objects. 8 objects are really important. You have to understand 8 objects. 8 objects are the 4 noble truths and ignorance of past, ignorance of future, ignorance of past and future, ignorance of dependent origination, Padecca Samuppada. Altogether, 8 objects. You have to understand 8 objects when you study avijja, when you study ignorance. You have to understand these 8 objects. Otherwise, you cannot understand while you are listening Mogu Sero's Dhamma talk. Whenever you listen Mogu Sero's Dhamma talk, you may not understand without understanding these 8 objects. Sometimes you listen Mogu Sero's Dhamma talk. Mogu Sero was explaining based on this diagram, based on this dependent origination. Dependent origination, Mogu Sero used to explain based on dependent origination. That's why you have to understand dependent origination basically. To understand dependent origination basically, here in Avijja, ignorance, we have to understand 8 objects. 8 objects are the 4 noble truths and ignorance of past life, past aggregate, ignorance of future aggregates, ignorance of past and future aggregates, ignorance of Paticcasamuppada, dependent origination. These are 8 objects for this Avijja. 8 objects. These are 8 objects. We have to study 8 objects. If you understand 8 objects, that is enough for Avijja. Avijja means ignorance. In detail, ignorance of the noble truth of suffering, ignorance of the noble truth of the cause of suffering, ignorance of the noble truth of cessation of suffering, ignorance of the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering, ignorance of past aggregate, ignorance of future aggregates, ignorance of past and future aggregates, ignorance of dependent origination. These are 8 objects. If you understand 8 objects, this is enough for Avijja. This is enough. Later on, we can study the story and other experience. In daily life, you may have experience. At the time, you can use your experience, our experience, and any other story as we like. We can understand, we can explain concerning with Avijja, ignorance. Okay, to understand Avijja, I do a review exercise. As review exercise, I'll explain again. And Avijja, Sankhara also, when you study Sankhara, you have to understand Punyabi Sankhara, Apunyabi Sankhara, Ananjabi Sankhara. Punyabi Sankhara, wholesome action. Apunyabi Sankhara, unwholesome action. Ananjabi Sankhara, unshakable action. Unshakable action. Punyabi Sankhara, Apunyabi Sankhara, Ananjabi Sankhara. Wholesome action, unwholesome action, and unshakable action. Wholesome activities, unwholesome activities, and unshakable activities. Wholesome formation, unwholesome formation, and unshakable formation. Some scholars translate as formation. Some are translated as activities. Some are actions. Concerned with the Sankhara. Sankhara means action. Sankhara means activities. Sankhara means formation. But different place, different translation, we have to understand. But we have to know these are translation of sankhara. We have to know, we have to understand. Different place, a different translation maybe. So this is a very important point when we study sankhara, concerned with the sankhara, and translation also we have to understand. Translation also we have to remember which one is correct, which one is more correct. Also we have to choose as we like. Later on we can analyze which one is better translation. Nowadays many scholars translate and Buddhist language and Pali Canon. To translate Pali Canon, it is very difficult. It is very difficult. To translate Pali Canon, Pali literature, we have to learn Pali language, we have to study Buddhist scripture, we have to understand Buddhist scripture. Without understanding Buddhist scripture, their translation is not complete, cannot be complete. That is very difficult. For example, Dhamma, the word of Dhamma. To translate this Dhamma, nobody can translate this Dhamma. To translate this Dhamma, it is very difficult to cover this word. So some scholars translate Buddha's teaching, some scholars translate and Dhamma is Dhamma, like that. So difficult to translate Pali word into English or any other languages. That is very important point. Okay, sankhara. Sankhara means here action. Generally translated sankhara here action. Sankhara means cetana, volition action. Sometimes volition action you can translate as volition action. Okay. Unshakable action. And then Kaya Sankhara, Vaji Sankhara, Citta Sankhara. Kaya Sankhara means physical action, Vaji Sankhara, verbal action, Citta Sankhara, mental action. Physical action, verbal action, and mental action. Physical wholesome action, verbal wholesome action, and mental wholesome action. Physical unwholesome action, verbal unwholesome action, and mental unwholesome action. We have to study as much as we can. And this is sankhara. Dealing with the sankhara, we have to remember Paunyabi Sankhara, Abonyabi Sankhara, Ananjabi Sankhara. That is enough. Sometime and Kaya Sankhara, Vaji Sankhara, Citta Sankhara. That is also Buddha's teaching. According to the Pali Canon, we have to study both of them. Paunyabi Sankhara, Abonyabi Sankhara, Ananjabi Sankhara, and Kaya Sankhara, Vaji Sankhara, Citta Sankhara. We have to understand both of them. We have to study one by one. Okay, Sankhara. After the Sankhara, we have to study Vijnana. Yesterday we have already studied Vijnana. Vijnana means consciousness. Consciousness are eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. To study consciousness, vijnana, this is essence of consciousness. We have to study 6 consciousness. That is enough for this consciousness. How they are arising, how these consciousness are arising yesterday, I had already discussed. Depending on the eye and forms, there arises eye consciousness. Depending on the ear and sounds, there arises ear consciousness. Depending on nose and smell, there arises nose consciousness. Depending on tongue and taste, there arises tongue consciousness. Depending on the body and tangible things, there arises body consciousness. Depending on mind and mind objects, there arises mind consciousness. That is how they are arising in our phenomena, mind and matter. In our mind, how they are arising in our mind, we have to study according to the dependent origination. According to the Buddha's teaching, they are arising in this way. We have to understand. Here we have already studied avijja, sankhara, vijnana. Concerning with avijja, we have to study 8 objects. Concerning with sankhara, 3 sankhara, Ponyabi sankhara, Abonyabi sankhara, and Ananjabi sankhara. And vijnana, consciousness. 6 consciousness are very important of vijnana. In this vijnana, 6 consciousness, 6 vijnanas are very important. Okay, someone explain as much as you can. I have already explained 3 factors. 3 factors already finished. How many factors do you understand? How many words do you remember? May I know? That's why someone explain me in English. 3 factors we have already finished. Among the 3 factors, as you understand, you can explain one of them. Who will explain me? May I listen what you understand? How you understand? How you understand? May I know your understanding? May I know your understanding? Today is 5th days, no? 5th days. Dependent origination, the cause of dependent origination, the cause of dependent origination. We have already discussed 4 days. We have already finished 4 days. Today is the 5th day. 5th hour. We have already studied. So, how many words do you understand? How many factors do you understand? Let me know. Let me happy. Make me happy. ကဲတရားလောက်ပြောပါဦးဒီခုသုံးမှာအင်္ဂါသုံးမှာပြီးသွားပြီပေါ့အင်္ဂါသုံးမှာပြီးသွားတဲ့ထဲကနေပြီးတော့နည်းနည်းဘယ်လောက်နားလဲတလဲဆိုတာလေးကိုနည်းနည်းလောက်ပြောပြပေးပါဦးအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုလေးနည်းနည်းလေးမှတ်မိတဲ့လောက်လေးပြောပြပေးပါဦးအခု4ရက်ပြီးသွားပြီပေါ့9ရက်မြောက်ရှိသွားပြီ9ရက်မြောက်ရှိသွားပြီဆိုတော့ဒကမာကြီးတွေပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်တရားရောက်ပေါ့နော်ဘယ်သူမှမပြောရင်တော့ဘုန်းကြီးဥဇောတိကပြောရမှာပေါ့နော်ဘုန်းကြီးဥဇောတိကပဲရှိတော့တယ်ကဲဒကမာကြီးတွေတရားလောက်လုပ်ပါဦးအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုရသလောက်မှတ်မိသလောက်ပေါ့နော်အဝိဇ္ဇာအကြောင်းကိုမှတ်မိရင်လည်းပဲ
shit, you're about that.
Okay.
Wait, suck at it, you're about that. Wait, so that the data, yeah. Always the data, data, young men and she to think that young men now for that the one to Naya Jama to a big Tana. America Jado say the parties are look for it, say it to the data. Now your don't have desire, say a young man the hour and the data. Now, the Kajana, say it. Choke down, say it choke down, say it choke me down. We must be on that, live at the hour and the data. You order this hour and the data. Say it choke down, did on pit there, make up this for the data. Say it do pit there, you order this hour and the data. Most took and China do pit and you order this hour and the data. China Jow, a kid on pit there. I got this out of the data. Now, Tanaraya, a sheet, they go up and they go up. They are like Canada and the data. The Rita Jaro, Tanaya now so. Tanaya now so Nagawama, they were young Masuna than the data. Prince and Tanaya, she is now so more than the data. This are live out than the data. Ways are look forward, yeah.
Okay.
Always a busy at them, Hara. Always a material at the job. Material at the job. Yamida love to the then Hara, then Hara Maga. Don't you see about it? Ponyawi then Hara. Ponyawi then Hara. Kutubo. Osa. The Ponyawi then Hara. Ga. Or the Kutubo. You look at material and you love Yellow. Apple Nabi then Haragas. I will go low there for the Divan and low down. Anazari then Haraga. Jamadi Yaujang. Tamaka low there will low down for a while. Even I looked at a great example. Young Tanayama to Yaman. Joe Tanayama to Party and I tell about Yama. The Nabi when Yana so that for data is cycle over again. I break the cycle and later is say when Yan don't you achieve again, when Yana about and when Yana the data is when Yana poverty, when Yana stupid when Yana the more settle you. Okay. They say yeah. Why would you say yeah? No. So they say as a settle you. I settle you. Settle you. Go see that. I settle you.
ဟောပေါ့စိတ်အဓိက2မျိုးလောက်ပြောရင်ရပါတယ်ဒီမှာဟောပေါ့ပဋိသန္ဓေဝိညာဉ်နဲ့ဝဋ္ဌိဝိညာဉ်နှစ်ခုလောက်ဆိုရင်ရပါပြီနော်ဟိုကတော့ရတယ်ပဋိသန္ဓေနဲ့ဝဋ္ဌိနဲ့ရပါပြီလောက်ဆို
ပဋိဆိုတာကသက္ကံတဏှိဆိုတာဆက်သက်ဟိုကွန်းနဲ့ဒီကွန်းဆက်ဆက်ကြတာပါဗျာပဋိသန္ဓေနေတဲ့ကြောင်းပြောမှာဗျာ
ရပါပြီအဲ့လောက်ဆိုရင်ရပါပြီ
နေရဖို့အတွက်ကအပဒေတွေမျိုးသားလေးမျိုးရှိပါတယ်ဗျာတေတူကကုမိဖေဝါနဲ့ပြီးတော့ဘုခါလာတာရဲ့အပ္ပဓမိဖေဝါနဲ့ပဲဥကနေပြီးတော့အောက်ခါလာတာရဲ့တမျိုးရဲ့ပြီးခါကြတော့ဟိုသူနတ်ပြပါလေနငရဲတွေဆိုင်နေမှာခန္ဓာကိုယ်မှာဘွားတဲ့နဲ့ဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ပရိသေတွေရဲ့နောက်အထူးဟောက်ကြတယ်ပြီးတော့ဖြစ်လာရဲ့ပရိသေတွေရဲ့ဆိုတော့ပရိသေတွေမျိုးရှိပါတယ်ဗျာအဲ့ပရိသေတွေအခုပြောမှာကလူတွေရဲ့ပဋိသန္ဓေတွေရဲ့အကြောင်းကိုပြောမှာပါဗျာပဋိသန္ဓေလူတွေမှာလူတွေရဲ့ပဋိသန္ဓေကမိခင်လူတွေရဲ့ပဋိသန္ဓေနေရာဖို့အတွက်ကဘုရားမိခင်နာအဆိုမိခင်အားလို့ရှိရင် Yadi Bapuya Bamata, I make a solution, Yoda and Beauty, the Musa, Lea Bamata, Pika Jara, Mikea, I put up the Nala, I take one name, they know that Matano, the one who killed her and the Kenya. Luang Hoya, Luang and the Kenya, I have been the Jamaican, Malata and Go Mala, that's Chile, Kajama, Mama, created in Dinero, created in Dinera Kajama, created in Kajama. Ozark, come on, Classini of your.
Yavi, my bureau, and my Yavino, and not a tabiro, the ball of your own, Yavi Yavino. Yellow body lost in Yavi. I'm missing the Kanakuma, one child was to Arabia. You see, and I am a home and shy and boy as saying, and don't tell me you are. You see, I say that I had music over Arabia. The corner another day for general Nancy Boardia. The corner another day for Nancy Boardia, Chanel. The other duty that come myself, the other sunset for one, who had duties and a dinner. The other don't say Chiba, number knowledge and reason and three and Jan say over another. Already a chain of Chidava, already a chain as an updated starting maybe the chain and be dog. So they soon they achieve Janta lying on Chidava. Every day they say that how he say that. And the day Mukadi, they soon is a jackala. Killa never, and Killa never, but they Supi Jara change you for the shadows are my bureau and my bureau and Yavino, and they were English, the answer of English look your nine, and the English look in a pure, no? No? Okay, English look your day, okay. The Baba Pivi, Tayar of you, English Luli, and then Taras, or English Luli, and then of your bow. English Luli, Mammy the Lolly. Okay, Channel to my English Luli, and then of your bow. Yamaluaro, Yadapi, knowledge about it. And they love. Nale the lovely book, and a low nale lays about it. Avaja, ignorance. Avaja means ignorance. Ignorance of noble truth of suffering. Ignorance of noble truth of the cause of suffering. Ignorance of noble truth of cessation of suffering. Ignorance of noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Ignorance of past aggregate. Ignorance of future aggregate. Ignorance of past and future aggregates. Ignorance of dependent origination, Padeja Smopada. And this is Avaja Sankara. Ponyabi Sankara, Aponyabi Sankara, Ananjabi Sankara, wholesome action, unwholesome action, unshakable action. Kaya Sankara, Vaji Sankara, Jeta Sankara, physical action, verbal action, and mental action. Consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. This is in brief, no? This is short to the point. Even though this is short to the point, this is very important. When you practice meditation, according to the Mogosaros method or according to dependent origination, you have to understand these factors. Without understanding these factors, you cannot practice meditation by way of dependent origination according to the Mogosaros method. This is a really essence. Really essence. Very important point. So you have to understand basic factors, basically three factors you have to understand physically. Okay. Ujodika, please tell what you understand, how you understand as much as you can. You can explain. Maybe you can explain as you please, as you like, as you understand. Not our discussion, not our teachings, not like that. You can tell as you understand, as you study. You can explain as you like.
Good evening.
Yes.
Thank you for giving me a chance to talk just a little bit dependent origination.
Okay.
So, in the dependent origination, fundamental of 12 factors really important. And the 12 factors, the first factor is the ignorance.
Yes.
See, that's avidya. So, avidya means in ignorance.
Yes.
So there's 8 objects of avidya.
Yes.
The first one is the noble truth of suffering. The second is the noble truth of the cause of suffering. The third is noble truth of sensation of suffering. And the fourth, a noble truth or the path leading to the sensation of suffering. And then number 5, the disbelief in past existence. Number 6, future existence. And then number 7, both past and future existence as well as ignorance of dependent origination, the brief of wisdom or ignorance.
Yes.
And the sankhara meaning is the pollution or some pollution actions. So there's basically there's three kinds of sankhara, right? Punyabi sankhara, apunyabi sankhara, and
Ananjabi sankhara.
Punyabi sankhara means wholesome actions. Apunyabi sankhara means unwholesome actions. And Islamic sankhara means unwholesome action. Those who have to do an wholesome action or bodily or physically or verbal or mentally, they have to do good deeds. Those who have to do an unwholesome action of physically or mentally or verbally, they may do a result and a bad result. So those practicing, hands-on accordance, basic practicing and samatha and outside meditation to make it above some brahma and shakti actions. So there's a base of sankhara, and then sankhara kachya vinyana is the consciousness. There's a non-dead consciousness. There's a physically there's 8 kinds of consciousness: eye consciousness, ears consciousness, nose consciousness, hand consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. So that's just a bit of vinyana.
Vijnana, yes. Okay.
Yes.
3 factors.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Your explanation, yes. All of 3 factors, you explain all 3 factors as much as you can. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, please, someone. Dhamayi ke lobao. Duပြောမလဲနည်းနည်းလောက်ကိုမှတ်ထားတာလေးပေါ့ရပါတယ်ကိစ္စမရှိဘူးနည်းနည်းပါးပြန်မှတ်မိတဲ့လောက်ကလေးဓမ္မကြီးတော်နုအောင်ပြောမလားမမြင့်စုပြောမလားတယောက်ပြောပါဦးဒီနေ့မှ2ယောက်ရှိတော့တာနော်နည်းနည်းပါးရပါတယ်သင်္นานရဲ့သဘောတရားရဓမ္မကြီးတွေဘယ်လောက်နားလဲတယ်လဲအေးကဲပြောရတယ်
The Bodhisattva is the dependent of origination.
Yes.
The four noble truth or selfless the noble truth of the sensation of the suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the
cessation of suffering. Okay, yes. The Four Noble Truth.
The Four Noble Truth.
Yes. Noble Truth of the way. Yeah. ဒီလောက်ဟုတ်ပြီဟုတ်ပြီကဲမမြင်စုပြောပါဆိုရင်ရပါဗျာဆိုရင်အဲ့လောက်ဆိုရင်မစိုးပါဘူးတော်တော်ထွက်လာပြီနောက်ကျရင်ပို့ပြီးတော့ဟောလောက်လာမှာကဲမမြင်စုပြောပါအောင်ကဲလိလာထားတဲ့လောက်လေးလုပ်ပါအောင်ဒီလိုမပြောရဘူးလားဘာလို့မပြောမကိုယ်မပြောရမလဲကိုယ်ရင်ကနေကိုပြောတာဘယ်သူမှမရှိဘူးဟုတ်တကယ်ကတော့ဟိုအလေးကျင့်မရှိကြလို့သူတို့တွေအဘိဓမ္မာတွေအကုန်အောင်မိသားဥဇောရိကတွေသူတို့အဘိဓမ္မာတွေအကုန်လုံးသင်္นานတွေတက်ပြီးသားတွေတိကာကျော်တွေပါတွေအကုန်လုံးအဘိဓမ္မာသင်္นานတွေအောင်မိသားတွေဓမ္မကြီးတော်နုနုအောင်တော့မပြောတတ်ဘူးဓမ္မကြီးတော်ုံးတည်ရလည်းပဲတရားအထုတ်နေကြဆိုတော့သူသိပြီးသားတွေအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုလေနည်းနည်းအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုမပြောတဲ့အလေးကျင့်မရှိလို့ပေါ့နော်အေးကဲဒါဆိုရင်တော့ဒီနေ့တယောက်ချင်းပြောလိုက်တော့မနေ့ကတော့ဘုန်းကြီးတစ်ပါးတည်းပဲကြံတော့မလားနောက်တစ်ပတ်ကြာရင်တော့နောက်တစ်ပတ်ကြာရင်တော့ဘုန်းကြီးတစ်ပါးတည်းပဲကြံတော့တတ်နိုင်ဘုန်းကြီးဇောတိကနဲ့ဒီတော့နှစ်ပါးလောက်ရှိရင်လည်းတိတ်မဆိုးပါဘူးထွက်ပြေးပုံများဟုတ်ပြီအဲ့တော့ဒါလေးကတော့အလေးကျင့်လေးပေါ့နော်အလေးကျင့်လေးရတော့အောင်လို့ဆိုပြီးတော့ပြောပြတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်သိပြီးတော့ဟိုလိုကြီးဟုတ်ပါဘူးပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါတရားနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့တကယ်လို့စိတ်ဝင်စားတဲ့ပုံကိုယ်ကြီးတွေ့ဘူးအောင်ကြုံဘူးအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့ဒီသင်္นานလေးခုလိုစီစဉ်ရခြင်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကဒါအလုံးအင်မတန်မှစိတ်ဝင်စားစရာကောင်းတယ်ဒါတော်တော်လေးစိတ်ဝင်စားစရာကောင်းတယ်ပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပြောကျင်တယ်ဆိုရင်လည်းပဲအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပဲဖြစ်စေမြန်မာလိုပဲဖြစ်စေတကယ်ကတော့ပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုနားလည်ခြင်း12လုံးအဓိကပဲ12လုံးရဲ့အဓိပ္ပာယ်နားလည်ရင်ပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါနားလည်တော့တာပဲအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပြောခြင်းလည်းဒီ12လုံးကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုနားလည်ရင်ပြီးပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကြိုက်တော့လှည့်တော့ပဲဒီ12လုံးလေးကိုဟိုကပိုင်နိုင်အင်္ဂလိပ်လိုနားလည်ရင်ပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုကြိုက်တယ်လို့လှည့်ပြောလို့ရသွားပြီဒီအင်္ဂါ12ပါးကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုသိရင်ဒီ12လုံးလေးသိသွားရင်အင်္ဂလိပ်လိုဟောလို့ရသွားတာပဲအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုဟောလို့ရသွားတာပဲအဲ့ဒါဆိုတော့တချို့ကလည်းပဲပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုကြီးဟောနိုင်တယ်ဆိုတော့အထင်ကြီးကောင်းကြီးမှာပေါ့နော်ထင်ကြီးကောင်းကြီးမှာပေါ့ကြီးတဲ့လူလည်းရှိသလိုတချို့လည်းအထင်မကြီးတဲ့လူတွေလည်းရှိမှာပေါ့ဟာပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုဟောသွားတာလားဟောသွားတာလား ਨੇ ဒီရောအနေနဲ့ကတော့ဟိုဒီ English ကိုလည်းပဲဒီလိုကျွမ်းကျင်ကျင်ကြီးမတတ်ပါဘူးကျွမ်းကျင်ကျင်ကြီးနားမလဲပါဘူးဒါပေမဲ့လို့ဘာလျှောက်တယ်လို့ပဲဒီလိုပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါကိုဒီအင်္ဂါ12ပါးကိုပဲအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုလေးနားလဲတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီလိုဟိုလိုလှည့်ပြောလိုက်ဒီလိုလှည့်ပြောလိုက်နဲ့ကိုနားလဲတယ်လို့လေးနဲ့ဒီလိုအသုံးချသွားတာပဲဒီလိုလေးလေးနက်နက်ကြီးလည်းပဲမသိပါဘူးအင်္ဂလိပ်လိုလည်းပဲလေးလေးနက်နက်ကြီးမသိပါဘူးပါဠိလိုလေးလည်းပဲလေးလေးနက်နက်ကြီးမသိပါဘူးဒါပေမဲ့လို့လှုပ်ချင်တဲ့စိတ်ကလေးတစ်ခုတည်းနဲ့ပဲဒီလိုလေးလုံနိုင်အောင်ကြိုးစားပြတ်သွားတာပေါ့လှုပ်ချင်တဲ့စိတ်ကလေးတစ်ခုနဲ့ပဲလုံနိုင်အောင်ကြိုးစားပြတ်သွားတာပါပဲဒါကိုကျွမ်းကျင်တယ်လို့မဆိုလိုပါဘူးတော်တယ်တတ်တယ်လို့လည်းပဲမဆိုလိုပါဘူးအဲကြောင့်ဒါလေးတွေလုံတာများလာတဲ့ခါကျတော့နည်းနည်းလေးပါဇက်ကောကိုယ့်ရဲ့အတွေးခေါ်ကောနည်းနည်းလေးတော့ familiar ဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုပြောရမှာပေါ့နည်းနည်းလေးပြောနေကြသွားတဲ့ခါကျတော့ပေါ့ပါလေးနည်းနည်းလေးပြောနိုင်လာတယ်အရင်ကပေါ့ပါသိမပြောနိုင်ဘူးအခုတဖြည်းဖြည်းနဲ့ပေါ့ပါလေးနည်းနည်းပြောနိုင်လာတယ်ပေါ့ပါလေးနည်းနည်းပြောတတ်လာတယ်ဒါကိုကျွမ်းကျင်တယ်လို့ပြောလို့မရပါဘူးဒါကျွမ်းကျင်တဲ့အဆင့်မဟုတ်ပါဘူးနည်းနည်းလေးပြောတတ်တဲ့အဆင့်လောက်ပဲပြောလို့ရပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ပြောချင်တာကတော့ဖြင့်ဒီပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါဇဝိုင်းဒေသနာကြီးကိုလေ့လာတဲ့အခါမှာအခုဆိုရင်အဝိဇ္ဇာပစ္စယသင်္ခါရဝိဇ္ဇာပစ္စယသင်္ခါရဆိုတဲ့စကားလုံးလေးအဲ့တော့ဝိဇ္ဇာဒီဟုသောအကြောင်းကြောင့်သင်္ခါရဒီဟုသောအကျိုးတရားတွေရတယ်ဆိုတာလေးဝိဇ္ဇာကြောင့်သင်္ခါရဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာလေးကို English lupyome so in option depending on ignorance there arises volitional actions, volitional activities. There arises volitional action. Depending on ignorance, there arises volitional action. Depending on ignorance, there arises action. Actually, that is action. Sankhara, Chaitana. In Pali words, that is Chaitana. Chaitana means volition. That's why volitional action. Sankhara, volitional action. Generally, sankhara. Generally known sankhara means formation, aggregate of formation, mental formation, aggregate of mental formation, sankhara, generally known as mental formation, aggregate of mental formation, that is sankharakanda. Sankharakanda. When we translate sankharakanda, generally known as aggregate of mental formation, sankhara, mental formation, sankhara. Here, avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara means chaitana. In this connection, we have to understand chaitana, volition. So, mostly translated into volitional actions. Translate as volitional actions. In this connection, volitional action is better. And Sankharakanda, when we translate Sankharakanda, aggregate of mental formation, most of scholars translated Sankharakanda as aggregate of mental formation. Sankharakanda, when we translate Sankharakanda, aggregate of mental formation. We used to translate Sankharakanda as aggregate of mental formation. Here, avijja paccaya sankhara, depending on ignorance, there arise volitional actions. Depending on volitional actions, there arises consciousness. There arises consciousness. Depending on volitional action, there arises consciousness. Depending on ignorance, there arises volitional actions. Depending on volitional action, there arises consciousness. So this is dependent origination according to the Mogusal's method based on Buddha's teaching. These are Buddha's teaching. So, dependent origination. To understand dependent origination, we have to study 12 factors. 12 factors are main point. These are main point. And when you study Pali, Myanmar or English, whatever languages you are studying dependent origination. These 12 factors are mainly important. Without understanding 12 factors, it is impossible to understand dependent origination. Without understanding 12 factors, it is impossible. It's not possible to understand dependent origination. So these are main point. This is really essential. What I'm explaining is really basic point, not in detail. Basically, we have to understand these factors. Without understanding basic point, you cannot study any others. You cannot understand Mogusal's Dhamma talk. When you understand this basic point, you can understand Mogusal's Dhamma talk very easily. Mogusal's Dhamma talk. Mogusaros, whenever he explained in his Dhamma talk, he used to explain by way of dependent origination. By way of dependent origination. Later on, Mogusaros explained, this is in first session or second session, third session, fourth session, something like that. At the time, we have to understand 12 factors. If you understand 12 factors, you can understand at all of dependent origination. And this is very important. That's why, and I'm taking times here, and avijja, sankhara, and vijnana, only 3 factors. I don't want to explain any other, many more factors. These 3 factors, if you understand these 3 factors, other factors are also not so difficult. Other factors are familiar with you. If you understand these 3 factors, later on you may understand very easily. If you don't understand these 3 factors, later on you may have confusion, very, very complicated. So this is only 3 factors. These are only 3 factors. At the beginning, we have to study, we have to take time at the beginning. If I explain in a hurry at the beginning, you cannot understand later on. You cannot understand. That is very important point. When we teach and some languages, other languages, not our own languages. That's why we have to take time at first. At the beginning, we have to take time. If we teach in a hurry at the beginning, you're going to understand basically. If you don't understand basic point, you cannot understand any others. Very difficult to understand the whole causes, the whole point. Okay, today I'm explaining 3 factors. 3 factors only. 3 factors are very important point. Avijja, sankhara, and vijnana. Avijja, if you study avijja, you have to understand the 4 noble truths in the 4 objects. The 4 objects. Altogether, 8 objects you never forget. You never forget these 8 objects. That is main point. When you study sankhara, you never forget 3 sankhara, Bonyabi sankhara, Abonyabi sankhara, and Ananjabi sankhara. You never forget. That is very important point. Wholesome, unwholesome, and unshakable actions. You have to remember 3 actions. 3 actions. 3 kinds of actions are very important in this sankhara. Vijnana, consciousness. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. And that is the main point. If you understand main point, that is enough. It doesn't matter, you don't understand any other explanation. Just understanding this basic point is enough to study dependent origination. Dependent origination is very important. When you study dependent origination, you may understand cause and effect. Depending on cause, originate effect. Depending on cause, originate effect. Dependent origination means cause and effect only. Depending on good cause, originate good effect. Depending on bad cause, originate bad effect. Good cause, good effect, bad cause, bad effect. Cause and effect only. If you do good cause, you can have good effect. If you do bad cause, you can have bad effect. Cause and effect only. Everything is cause and effect. The whole universe is cause and effect. All are dependent origination, cause and effect only. So in our life, if we need a good result, if we want good result, we have to do good cause. and then we can have good result. We want good result, but we are doing bad cause. It is impossible. It is impossible. So cause and effect only. Good cause, good result. Bad cause, bad result. If you study dependent origination, you can understand cause and effect. Okay, I hope today is enough. And next week, we are going to study Vijnana and Namarupa and so on. Namarupa and so on. And next week, Thursday and Friday, Namarupa, Salayarana and so on. We are going to study little by little, not many more, little by little. We are going to study next week also. Please trying to study little by little and dependent origination, and not only English but also Burmese language also. Very, very essential. This is a very important Dhamma talk. Even the Buddha attained Buddhahood because of practicing meditation on dependent origination. Because of practicing meditation on dependent origination, Buddha attained Buddhahood. Under the Bodhi tree, future Buddhas, under the Bodhi tree, and first watch of the night, second middle watch of the night, first watch of the night, second watch of the night, third watch of the night. Buddha practiced meditation under the Bodhi tree. Bhattama Yama means Bhattama Nyen Uyen, first watch of the night, Nyen Uyen ma, and he attained Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, and Anuloma ni apien, and a Padisa the Mubago, and singing or Mulaida, Padisa the Mubago singing later. Now Padisa the Mubago, Anulon singing Biroma, Nulo, reverse order, Nulon singing Biroma, now Badilon singing, Badiloma ni apien, Abian singing. Now, Anulom Badilo bien singing. First watch of the night, he attained Pobe Nivasa no Sati Jnana. Pobe Nivasa no Sati Jnana. Misimayan, middle watch of the night. Misimayan, Maropin, Deva Seku Jnana. Now, Visimayana, the last watch of the night, next morning, and Bodhisattva, the future Buddha, came to under the Bodhi tree on full moon day, he practiced meditation on dependent origination. When he practiced meditation on dependent origination, Pachimayama, next morning, Ero, Visimayan, Modaoyan Kora, Modaoyama, Aswakiya Jnana, he attained Aswakiya Jnana and Savanyuda Jnana. Aswakiya Jnana and Savanyuda Jnana he attained. At the time he attained Buddhahood. Because he practiced meditation on dependent origination. So dependent origination is Buddha's insight meditation. Buddha's insight meditation. စ္စည်းမယံလို့ခေါ်တဲ့မိုးတော့ယံမှာအာတဝခေယဉာဏ်နဲ့တပ်ပိညိတဉာဏ်တော်ကြီးကိုရပြီးတော့ဖျားဖြစ်သွားတာအဲ့ဒါဟာဒီပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါကိုဆင်ញင်ပြီးတော့မှဖျားဖြစ်သူရောက်တော်မူတယ်ဆိုတော့ပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါဆိုတာဗုဒ္ဓဝိပဿနာလို့ဒီလိုခေါ်တယ်တက္ကရာဆရာများကပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါကိုဗုဒ္ဓဝိပဿနာလို့ခေါ်တယ်ဒီပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါတရားကိုဆင်ញင်ပြီးတော့မှဖျားဖြစ်သူရောက်တော်မူတာဖျားဖြစ်သူရောက်ပြန်တော့လေဒီပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါကိုပဲပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တော်မူတာပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တော်မူတာဘောဓိပင်နဲ့ရွှေပလင်မှာကိုပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တဲ့တရားဟာပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါတရားပဲအဲ့ဒီမှာအနေကစာတိတန်တာရံဥဒံကျူးရင်တာတွေဟာအဲ့တော့ပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါဟာဖျားမဖြစ်ခင်ကလည်းပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါကိုဆင်ញင်ပြီးတော့မှဖျားဖြစ်သူရောက်တော်မူတယ်ဖျားဖြစ်ပြန်တော့လေပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တဲ့နိကေငါရဲ့ပိဋကသုံးပုံဓမ္မခန္ဓာပေါင်း8400မှာပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တော်မူတဲ့တရားဟာပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါတရားပဲနှုတ်တော်ကနေထုတ်ဖော်ပြီးတော့ဟောကြားတဲ့တရားကတော့ဓမ္မစကြာတရားကတော့နှုတ်ကနေထုတ်ဖော်ပြီးဟောတဲ့တရားပရိစ္ဆသမုပ္ပါတရားကတော့ပထမဦးဆုံးဆင်ញင်တော်မူတဲ့တရားအဲ့တော့ဘုရားရှင်များအလေးနဲ့ထားတော်မူတဲ့တရားကြီးကိုအခုလေ့လာခွင့်ရနေတာဖြစ်တယ်အလွန်အင်မတန်မှနည်းနည်းတဲ့တရားကြီးအလွန်အင်မတန်မှကိုဒါလေးစားတဲ့လေးစားထိုက်တဲ့တရားတော်မြတ်ကြီးကိုမြန်မာလူတွေလည်းလေ့လာခွင့်ရတယ်အင်္ဂလိပ်လူလည်းလေ့လာခွင့်ရတယ်ဆိုတော့အလွန်အင်မတန်မှဝမ်းသာစရာကောင်းပါတယ်ဒါကြောင့်ကဲအချိန်လည်းပြည့်ပါပြီအဲ့တော့ယောဂီတော်စင်တွေကိုဆရာတော်တန်ဃာတော်ရှင်သူမြတ်တွေကိုတရားနာပရိသတ်တွေအားလုံးယနေ့မှစ၍အသက်လည်းရှိကြပါစေအနာရောဂါတွေမှန်သမျှလည်းကင်းရှင်းကြပါစေဒီထက်မကကျမ်းမာဒီထက်မကချမ်းသာ